Hello, my name is Megan Lee Anderson, and I will be presenting on racial inequality and how it impacts students on college campuses. We all know that racism has had a deep history in our country, and this has deeply affected Black students all across America. So, we're going to take a deep dive on why it has impacted them, what causes it, what affects it, and we're also going to look at different solutions that could help us bridge the gap between inequality and equality. There has been extensive research on how racism shapes the lives of students of color in college. Racial inequality within college enrollment has impacted the Black community because of the racism that has taken place. This could be back in history when white people were able to attend college versus Black people, all the way up until now, where a lot of students are not granted scholarships, are not able to financially provide for their tuition because they are constantly in poverty. What is on today's agenda? Today we will take a look at a brief overview of how racial inequality has impacted American history, recognize how racial inequality and experiences have affected students of color, learn different stages or strategies and techniques for understanding how to support and advocate for students of color, and strategize on how to acknowledge experiences of students of color and how to promote that on campus. And like I said before, bridge the gap between inequality versus equality. Racism has influenced higher education. There has been extensive research on how racism shapes the lives of students of color in college. The percentage of Black Americans attending college has doubled over the last 20 years. However, only 10% of Blacks earn college degrees, and most of them attend lower quality institutions. Racial inequality has impacted the Black community based off of the causes that will be stated in the next slide. Here we have African American inequality. Throughout history, Blacks have been among the most marginalized communities in America. In all aspects of life, including employment and education, Blacks were not given the same opportunities such as their white counterparts. This is still an issue in today's society. The second bullet point we have is mass incarceration. In a study from Child Trends, 1 in 9 children have had a parent incarcerated. For Black adolescents, ages 12 through 17, the ratio is 1 in 7. This has already created an educational gap in Black communities. Children of incarcerated parents also suffer with mental health issues such as depression, trauma, and neglect. The third point that I put here is police brutality and how that has impacted social media. As police brutality was increasing, especially in 2020 with the death of George Floyd, many young adults struggle with the overload of social media, influx of police videos, what they're reading, what they're hearing. Students have become are overwhelmed mentally and emotionally, even to the point where students are experiencing their own racism. Effects on mental health. Many Black students and families are dealing with grief, fear, trauma, racism, violence, and poverty. Many students cannot afford mental health services unless there is some sort of financial support. According to Jeff A. in an article written from The Atlantic, there are some studies that show that just hearing about somebody in the community being a victim of violence is also related to symptoms of anxiety, she says. And so, given these kinds of data, one would expect that watching this content and being exposed to it on a pretty frequent basis would also have negative impacts on their mental health. I also wanted to talk about the images that were on the slide. 1 in 4 Americans suffer from a diagnosable mental disorder. Minority populations are less likely to receive diagnosis for their behavior issues and have less access to mental health services. So we can see that minority populations already don't have the advantages of receiving mental health services, primarily because they may not seek after that, but also because of just the types of care that providers are giving to minorities. Other stressors that Black people may encounter: racism, discrimination, violence, and poverty. We forget that this is a part of our mental health because people are constantly using other mechanisms to stop themselves from thinking of these things, whether it's just forgetting about it or just brushing it off. But this is a part of a minority person's struggle on a daily basis. And sometimes I think when we work in higher education or just in education in general, we forget about that. Among students enrolled in four-year public institutions, 45.9% of Black students complete their degrees in 6 years, the lowest rate compared to the other races and ethnicities. Black men have the lowest completion rate at 40%. This high dropout rate is partially due to the fact that 65% of African American college students are independent, meaning they must balance pursuing a degree with full-time work and family and responsibilities. As we take a look at these quotes, we see how in a four-year university, it takes students up to 6 years to complete their degree versus the traditional four-year plan. And then we also see that Black men have the lowest completion rate of 40%. That could go back to mass incarceration, that can go back to police brutality of just their daily struggles and what they're dealing with. And then we also see the dropout rate for students as a whole, and a lot of them have family, they have work responsibilities, they have other things outside of college that stop them from truly finishing. And that could also be financial causes as well. So we talked about mental health struggles and then the graduation rate and the lack of financial aid that these students are provided with. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this quote here. Well, there's two quotes. This one, when individuals are not recognized or don't feel at home or unable to contribute as they might, we all suffer, we're all weakened. We're not as strong as we could be. So some solutions for this would be the higher education institutions should prioritize the needs of students of color. A potential solution for equity for students and staff would be to offer forums and meetings where people are able to express their concerns, emotions, and thoughts about topics such as mass incarceration, police brutality, and other grievances from history that has affected them. Creating a safe space for students to share and cultivating a way of learning to understand different perspectives is important in promoting diversity. Institutions should also implement and offer ongoing counseling and therapy for students of color as they navigate through college. I will leave you with this quote. Black people know that the country is racist from its very foundation, but there can be long stretches where we don't have particular incidents where it rises up and totally disorients our days, our months, and in some cases our jobs. This is from William C. Gibson, the Vice President for University Life. Thank you for listening to this presentation. As an attendee, ask yourself what you can do to help these students of color. As a community, are we closing the gap of racial inequality? Or are we widening it? As we move forward, providing students with proper support is crucial to their success. Let's be open-minded and acknowledge our own discrepancies and prejudices about this topic in order to bridge the gap between inequality and equality for all students. And there is space to grieve, there is space to talk, there is space to listen to each other, whether you are Black or white or Asian or Hispanic, it doesn't matter. We all have our own discrepancies and our prejudices, and it's important for us to collaborate and think about each other and our own, and how we can step into that gap and support one another. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.